Right, well, a bit about me then, because I don't know anyone here, but thanks so much for inviting me. I've got 12 years experience in tech recruitment in the UK, specifically. And I've ran a team for a FTSE 250 organisation that was billing over £1 million every quarter of that year. And then after 7 years of doing that, I then set up my own business in Manchester city centre in St Peter's Square. I built a team there, and then I also built and managed a team down in London, so I was doing both. Whilst managing and growing and training a team of recruiters, I was also heavily involved in tech recruitment, largely for startup organisations, largely in the tech industry as well. So I've got a really, really good grasp of what tech founders are looking for in terms of the skills that they look for, and then also how the recruitment process goes, because thank you. I really need my water because I'm not well today. But in terms of, how to offer candidates to join your startup business, which can seem really quite wild sometimes, because you think, this is my baby, this is what I want to own, this is what I do. I'm so bought into it, thank you. And then, you want whoever you bring into the organisation to feel that same passion. Sometimes you can find those people. Sometimes it's, a case of, yes, you might speak to a few people who seem really suitable. Then after a few months, you realise actually things aren't going well, and then you're back to square one again, which for every startup is probably the last thing that they want. A bad hire can be very, very expensive for any organisation. So making sure that you've got the right people from the beginning is so crucial for getting your startup up and running. For all of the startups that I've worked with, they offer very different packages, and their routes to goal have been completely different. I'd say it's on a case-by-case basis how they go about it, and it also depends on the founders' backgrounds as well. So if you are, I don't know what your startups are, if they're heavily involved in tech, but if you are in the tech industry and that's what your product is built off the back of, definitely make sure that you're going to as many tech community events as possible and getting your name out there. Employer brand, employer marketing is crucial right now, because the tech industry is so busy. It's so competitive as well. To give you an idea of some of the packages that we were offering for developers, 4 years ago it was about 60k. Now they're about 120k, and that's for startup companies as well, just because of the competitiveness in the market at the moment. So I think your mission, your brand, where you want your product to go, what value it gives, not just to you, to everyone, is so important. The diversity piece and the inclusivity piece, the culture that you want to build for the organisation is massively important as well. So it's things like, how do you want your workforce to work? Do you want them to be fully on site? Which right now in tech, people don't want to be working on site full time. They're more productive working from home, working remotely, getting all of the work done, and then checking in maybe on Slack or doing team calls. So I think really getting back and then looking ahead for maybe 5 years ahead as to where you want your business to be and how you think you're going to get there and how many heads you need is really, really important. So a lot of the tech companies that we work with, where it might just be one founder from the beginning, we strongly advise them to go and find a NED, so a CTO that's worked for, a similar type of company, perhaps in the same industry. Get them on board and get them on board for 1 or 2 days per week. And if you can't afford that, do it on an hourly basis and really be a sponge around these NEDs. Something that's really important for a lot of the tech startups that we've worked with, and to give you an example, Monzo is one, Chip is another one, they're in the financial sector, Bioba is in insurance. We tell them to get a NED to help them understand the tech stack that they're working with. So I don't know if any of you have got tech stacks in place or you've got any thoughts about tech stacks. There are some really cool, really funky technologies out there that are up and coming, and I know that they're taught at universities. But at the same time, some of those technologies, if you were to hire for people with those skills, you would be looking to pay crazy money. So a majority of our tech startups, for example, Monzo, who are massive, I'm sure you've all heard of them, they started off building their tech stack on PHP. PHP is a very cheap, free technology that you can use and you can scale very, very quickly. And then you can flip it and migrate all of that onto something like Node or JavaScript or something that is a bit more expensive, but obviously do that after funding stage. One thing that we've also found with tech startups is the recruitment process. A lot of companies, I won't say a lot of companies actually, that it varies. You get companies that will want to do 5-stage recruitment processes that might be amazing, might seem amazing for the company. And, it is their vetting process at the end of the day. But at the same time, for a person to go through 5 stages to then find out that they might not be suitable at the end is a huge amount of time that they've given you. Some people see it as free consultancy as well, and it can really put them off. And the last thing you want is to create a bad name for yourself so early on in your business, especially in the tech industry, because people talk and they'll talk to everyone. And, there's one business that I've been working with just over the last week who are a tech startup sort of, but they've been going for 5 years and they've reached 150 heads so far. And they already have a really, really bad name for themselves in the market. And that is purely because of their recruitment process. So not giving feedback to people is something that you cannot do, whether you like giving feedback or not, or if it's really bad feedback, you have to make sure that you get back to people, because not doing that really will ruin your name in the industry. One thing that I'd probably advise is a really good kind of recruitment process is 2-stage interview process. So the first stage, be really, really in depth with what you're asking, really understand the person, ask them to come with testimonials, ask them to come with a portfolio so you can have a proper look at their work. I think tech tests are now kind of out of the door. Companies are stopping doing those because you can really see, you should be able to see from a portfolio what someone can deliver. And, to be honest with you, you've got them in the role, you're able to see what they can do. Quite early on, you should be able to understand if they really are suitable for the organisation or not. So I'd say 2-stage interview process. First stage is just getting to know them, understanding what value they can bring to the business. And then the second stage is meet and greet with the rest of the team and make sure the rest of the team are bought into them and they're bought into you culturally. Another thing that I'd probably say to stay clear of is job boards. Job boards are massively expensive, and a lot of startups that I've worked with have started off trying to recruit via job boards. To give you an example, one advert could cost £400 and you might get 80 applicants, but they could be 80 applicants that do not have the experience, and because you might have system administrator in the job title, you might have loads of admin people applying who are just not relevant, and that is very, very time consuming to go through. I would always try and build your own network, so go to as many events that are happening in Manchester or in the local area or even outside of the area. So Manchester's very busy as a tech hub, but if you want someone that's, if you don't have the money to pay for someone and compete with some of the more local businesses, go slightly outside of Manchester and opt for fully remote workforce. That could probably help you save costs. But then it would then be up to you to maintain the culture as you grow your business. So ways that we've seen organisations doing it is by doing, monthly days out, monthly trips, like employee team gatherings where they do like loads of fun games and stuff like that. So I'd say try and get as many of those in the diary as possible, but then give everyone proper objectives and actions to work towards. And then I would say for other startups that we've worked with, one thing that they've offered as a package, because I imagine some of you are wondering what to offer some of these people if you don't have that much funding yourself, is shares. So a startup that we placed with last year, we placed a lead developer, and he's essentially going to be the CTO for the organisation. He will be mentored by a Ned who's working 1 or 2 days with that same business to help the lead developer grow into a more senior CTO leading role. And the way that they've offered that package is they've given a very, very low baseline, so something that he can afford to live off. But as the funding comes through, they're increasing his salary per funding round. So in September's the next funding round, they'll increase his salary by 8k. Then another funding round the next year in April, and then they'll increase it to 11k per month. But then they're also offering equity and shares. So I think you have to really understand how important the people are for your business and to getting it off the ground, and really kind of thinking, I know it's difficult because I own my business as well. And when we launched, we had investors, saying that they'd like to invest. And it's a lot to give away, 20% of your business. But if that person is going to help your business go from A to B and C, it's not that much to give away in the whole grand scheme of things. So I think from my point of view now, I've kind of given you like the background of what to offer. I'd really want to understand, where you're up to. If anyone wants to speak to me or ask me any questions, I'm more than happy to give you my advice.
I just had a quick general question. What are some kind of red flags that you are able to pick up from now through like your experience?
Yeah, so for example, straight away, I'd say things like people saying that they're going to do stuff and they're not doing it. That there's no commitment on their part, and it just looks really, really bad. If people don't turn up to interviews, I'd probably just say draw the line right there, because it will be a waste of your time. And given that this is your baby that you are trying to grow and take off the ground, the last thing you want is someone eating up your time, not really appreciating it and not giving anything back. Where there are hundreds of thousands of really good developers and really good tech engineers out there that you can speak to who will be bought into your journey and will be bought into the business. It's just finding the right people. But that's why I've said it's incredibly important to make sure that you attend as many conferences and networking events as possible, and meet people and speak to them about what you're doing, speak to them about your brand. Don't feel shy, because some of these tech people are massively interested in things like this, and you'll be surprised how many developers that we've spoken to who would give so much of their time for some equity, because it's something that isn't always offered. Some of these tech developers will just have a base kind of salary. They work for larger organisations, which is great. They get paid amazingly, but then they feel like, their job and their work on a day-to-day basis isn't adding proper value, and they can't see where the growth is. They would love these kinds of opportunities. It's just presenting it to them in the right way. And I can't tell you exactly which way to present it, because it is very much dependent on that person and what they're looking for. And I guess it's up to you to match, what it is that they're after, and then also for you to make sure that what they're offering matches what you're looking for as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
It really does.
Yeah.
So for us, it's currently just the two of us.
Yeah.
We haven't really officially recruited anyone, but we need sort of some expertise. For example, like an electrical engineer. It could be, for now at least, an electrical engineering student.
Yeah.
But the problem we have is sort of how much information is too much information to give someone? Because we could talk for like maybe 20 minutes and explain what it is we're trying to do. But we could summarize that with a document of like maybe 2 A4 pieces of paper, something like that, just to get them on board.
I think personality and buying into people is what would get any electrical engineers or any students involved in what you're both doing. So I would always say speak to them about it and don't worry about giving away too much information. If you're worried that they might run away with your idea, take that away from your head because it's your idea and you know everything about it. You know, they can try and copy it, but whether they'll do it in the same way that you guys would do it, you know, who knows? I think you've got to really back yourself and know that this is what you're doing. This is a great opportunity. And if you explain it to someone, you know, in the right way and you're like humble about it as well, you know, this is what we're looking to do. We're looking to get you on board. We'd love you to be a part of our journey. This is what we can offer you. You know, what are you looking for? And then take it from there and really see if they're the type of person that you'd want working with you in your business. And then, you know, offer them shares if that's something, or equity, for example, offer them equity and say, you know, if you stay with us for 3 months and you get the product to this level, we can offer you a bit more equity. It doesn't have to be like 10% straight away. It could just be 3% going up by, you know, 2% increments. But as long as you've got, you know, like their buy-in and, you know, you're bought into what they're offering and the value that they're giving you, I think, you know, you've got nothing to lose.
I mean, so we've already found, you know, a couple of potential students to help, like, bring on. My question was just more about, like, onboarding, sort of, like, how do we, I don't know how to explain this. Like, a lot of people that I know already know what we're doing in a rough sense.
Yeah.
But obviously we need them to do, like, technical work. So at what point do I, like, we haven't done enough research to, like, know for sure this is exactly what I need you to do. So how do I get them to, like, do research to check that what I want them to do is the best thing, but then also get them to, like, check in with me and then do that?
So I think, well, I mean, that is pure onboarding.
Yeah.
Firstly, I don't know if you've read it, but it's the 90-day plan.
Okay.
I'd definitely read that because that's what a lot of business owners have asked me to read. You know, when I started up the business in Manchester and then I did my own, I did it off a 90-day plan. So you know what you're expecting the first day, in the first week, in the second week, by the first month. It's all clearly laid out. And I think that then avoids any kind of disappointment on both parts. I think you have to really look at what you want that person to do. So I'd probably say in the first day, you want them to understand, you know, the product and who's involved and where they need to go to find out whatever information. And then I'd say have a check-in in the morning, give them their objectives for the day, and then check in with them in the afternoon and see how they've got on. And just say to them, you know, if at any point throughout the day you're stuck or you've got any questions, give me a call or put it on Slack and I'll get back to you straight away. And then that's probably how we'd manage the accountability remotely. I'd just say don't overthink it, because if you've decided to hire someone, you know that they're already bought into your business, your proposition, the mission. So, you know, just give them the information. You've hired them for a reason. You know that they've got the right skills. Let them run with it. I think too much micromanagement is enough to put someone massively off. So yeah, I'd probably just do 2 check-ins.
Perfect. I'll give that book a read.
Yeah. 90-day plan's really good. Has anyone else got any questions?
I said before about like lots of companies doing 5 stages.
Yeah.
But did you mention doing just 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 stages, because 5 stages is just killjoy, and who has 5 hours of their own time to give to not just one candidate but several candidates, because you'll always have several in the process. And I just think no one has time to do that, and neither will the candidates either. Because if you think you've put someone through 5 stages and then you've not offered them the job at the end of the day, it's enough to leave a sour taste in the mouth. Whereas if it's 2 stages and still at the end you're unsure, 2 stages is enough to leave, you know, the process amicably, and then just move on to the next candidate. One thing that we work to, though, in terms of our recruitment is we work to smart ratios. So we typically tend to hit 2,000 people per vacancy that we recruit. So that is via the job boards, largely via LinkedIn, and then via our own network and our own database. Off the back of that, you want to interview via the phone 100 people to really make sure that you're, speaking to enough people to understand if you really have shortened down, the candidate pool to the right people for your business. And then we typically shortlist 5 people in total per vacancy, interview 3 out of the 5, and then offer 1. And whenever we've worked to those ratios, we've always made successful hires. So I think it's worthwhile trying to work to a ratio yourself so that you've got some kind of confidence that you are hitting enough people, but then also narrowing it down to make sure you've got the best for you.
I wanted to talk maybe something similar about that. How do you find the balance between almost being a perfectionist and going through as many candidates as possible and trying to find that perfect person, and the other side of the spectrum, which is just like hiring the first person that you see? How do you not spend an eternity trying to hire, but also not too little?
I think so. I mean, the hiring processes that we have, perm or contract, it's not longer than a week that we spend hiring each position. So, I mean, I think it's really based on what your checklist is. And if you come across someone and they meet 80% of the checklist, capability wise, but then they also have, the right mentality that you're looking for, they're massively bought into the business, I'd say hire that person, because they can also grow within your organisation and you then can add value to them as well. It's not like they've got everything that you need and then they've straight away hit a glass ceiling, because that's probably the last thing you want when you hire, because you don't want someone to join your business, understand, and then get bored and leave. So I'd say if someone's hitting 80% of your checklist and they've got the right mentality and the right motivations, hire them. And don't hang around either, because the market's moving so quickly. If you hang around, you make that person think, oh, they're not sure about me, there's something not quite right, and then they then start being unsure about the whole thing, and then they might step back, and then before you know it, you might have lost a really, really good opportunity. So I think you just have to move quickly and run with it and take risks sometimes, but obviously educated risks. And just go with it. I mean, at the end of the day, I know it's a horrible thing to say, but there are always notice periods and they're there for a reason. So if you think someone's not working out, hand the notice. And typically in contracts, permanent contracts that we place, there's an immediate notice in the first month. So I think if you guys are putting together employment contracts, immediate notice in the first month is fairly standard, and then it's 1 month's notice thereafter. Standard probationary period is 3 months. But you would also have to be registered as a UK employer if you are going to hire someone into your business. So register with HMRC as well.
Thank you.
That's okay.
So I'd have like three sort of comparisons that for you to answer, and feel free to go on a bit of a riff, because sometimes in hiring you do have to make like trade-offs, right? Or you have to make decisions. So the first one of those 3 is attitude versus skills. Your opinion, or like which one?
So I get this question a lot, and I think attitude is a lot, especially for startups. Skills you can teach. So I would go for attitude over skills all the time.
The second one being potential versus experience.
I'd go for both there. I mean, if someone's got really good experience, it comes back to what you've just said. If you hire someone that's got all of the experience that you're after, you're potentially running a slight risk that after a year or 2, they'll feel like they've hit that glass ceiling and there's nowhere for them to go within the organisation, having built it with you. So I would always go for potential over full experience. You don't want to hire someone that's completely not experienced and then you're holding their hand the whole way through it. And then that's also eating up a lot of your time. But you want someone to have enough experience for you to work with and build on and also utilise for your business. But then it's really, the potential that they can bring that will be most important for where you want your business to go.
And the last one is generalists versus specialists.
Right, this is really difficult for startups because it really depends on the money that you have and the funding that you've got. So, I mean, you can always have a generalist, but they're never going to truly, really understand the, bare bones of your product, potentially not in the way that you want them to. So to give you an example, there are tech startups that we've worked with in the telecommunications industry, and they might have hired a generalist to begin with to kind of get them up off the ground. But then if that generalist has got them up off the ground, but the product isn't scalable, they've hit a really bad block there. So I always think someone that is an expert in the field for your startup is the best way to go. So to give you an example, the InsurTech startup that we've signed terms with recently, they've gone for several NEDs. So they're in the insurance space. So they've gone for a NED that has worked in insurance for large companies and tech startups for 20 odd years. And they're picking her brain and understanding, what does she think about the product and what elements can she add to it to really take it off the ground and make sure that it's, the latest, newest thing that's really going to add loads of value to consumers. And then she's got another NED that is a CTO. So that person's going to help her understand, the CEO understand, how that product is going to work and bring it actually to life in a tech aspect. And I think having NEDs on board, giving them shares of your business, and really to have a NED, they are very, very expensive. So the NEDs that we work with are about £1,000 a day, and that's minimum. But the value that they bring is so much to get your business up off the ground. It's very much worth it. So if you do get funding, the first thing I'd do is I'd go to someone who has worked in the same industry, who has knowledge of the tech side of things, because it's tech that's the most expensive, really. And then go with it that way. I don't know if I've answered your question or if I've just gone right off the mark, because you said generalist or expert, didn't you? I go for expert all the way, especially if it's your startup, because you're going to be up against other startups that might have a similar idea. If they've gone for a generalist and you've gone for an expert, you're winning all the way. So go for the expert. That's what I do.
How would you figure out also then, like, who to hire?
So what I'd do is I'd look at your competitors, if you're aware of your competitors, and if you're not, find them. Like, find who's out there that's doing something similar that you might want to replicate and make better. Like, find out who they are and who they've hired and what their journey's been. And then I'd go to LinkedIn and I'd go to your network. I'd speak to as many people as possible, and don't feel shy about it either. There are loads of people out there that are willing to help, and loads of people are really interested in finding out like new cool things that are going on. So definitely don't feel like you're bothering people, when you're just randomly messaging someone who's in a similar space to you. Do it in a nice way and introduce yourself and tell them why you're getting in touch, and then ask for their opinion. And I just think you've got nothing to lose at all. And the only way that you're going to do it is by speaking to loads of people. LinkedIn is free, and I think it's a really, really good tool to use. So make sure you're getting your brand out there, make sure you're doing your marketing and you're doing as much as you can to get your product out there so everyone knows who you are. And then speak to people. That's the only way I can advise, because if I tell you to go down a recruitment agency point of view, it's going to be very expensive and it's just not going to work for you from the beginning. You're essentially giving money away to an agency who, yes, might find you amazing people, but it's costing you a hell of a lot when you can be putting that into your product. So I'd just go on LinkedIn and I'd add as many people as possible. So on LinkedIn, you can add 100 people a week. Start doing that now. Start doing it now. That's probably the most important thing I have to tell you, because if you're at the start of it and you're thinking, right, I need to get my network, you can add 100 people without, having that many connections to them, add them all and keep doing it every week. And then by the time you might be ready to launch or, really properly start hiring people, at least you'll have a good base. And, tell them your journey, like share videos, tell them what you're doing. It helps other people get on board with you and actually buy into your product. And I think it's massive. So I think, that's one thing that I definitely advise to do.
Kind of the other side of recruitment, which is, what is a person valued at? Like, what are you paying them? What is the compensation like? How would you go about, especially in like a startup kind of perspective, understanding either what the salary should be or like how much equity? Like, how do you measure that?
So I think, it depends on how much money you've got. Because if you don't have that much money, it's very, very difficult to hire, because not that many people will do anything for free, which is where the equity piece and the passion from the individual has to come into play. Like, they have to be massively bought in. And that's where, if like, for instance, the couple over there said about be looking for an electronics person. If that person's going to help them get the thing off, and there's two of you right now, perhaps split it into three and have three co-founders, then you've got that person massively involved, because they know they're part of, the C-suite that's going to get this product off the ground. If they're doing all the work and like telling you how to do it, and you're owning potentially, the business, they're not getting much back from it, and you want this person to be massively bought in. So the only way you're going to do that if you don't have a salary to offer is by offering, a good amount of equity to get someone involved, especially if, if they are very good, if they're really good, they know what they're worth, and you don't want to devalue that, because that's the first way you can turn someone off from your business straight away. In terms of salaries, I don't really want to talk about salaries, because I do think it'll scare you a lot with what's out there. So like some of I don't know if any of you guys are involved in data or AI or robotics, like that space, we've seen huge amount of growth in terms of the salaries. So last year, for a good data scientist, you'd be paying 80k. Now that's moved to 100k. And that's largely because a lot of tech talent are already engaged, they're already working, there's a massive shortage. So in order to pull someone from one business and encourage them to join yours, we're finding a lot of companies are upping the salary in order to get someone, but then they have an internal problem, because they've got 8 data scientists already working in the team that are on 80k, yet you've just hired someone from, I don't know, Monzo, and you're paying them 100k, then you need to level out the salary within the team. So there's a lot going on in the tech industry. I'd probably keep away from salaries right now, and I'd probably just hope for the equity piece.
Focus on the students.
Yeah, focus on the students.
This leads to another piece about like retention. So obviously when you get to that amazing stage where you have these people working and you can attract that talent, retain that talent as well, because you're taking somebody with potential and who can do it. Then you're training them, as you're saying, but then you don't want to lose that, because
you don't want to lose it. So that's where, for example, that insurtech company business that I mentioned, they are right at the start, but they have received funding. So they received, I think, 1.4 million funding last month, and they have got the product to MVP stage. And at the next funding round, which will come in September, they're giving more equity. So I think to begin with, the salary was €8,000 per month until September. And then they've offered 3% equity. And then in September, they're offering 2% equity, providing that candidate's done all the work to ensure that they can then go for the next funding round and be successful, he then gets more equity and then a bump on the salary. So I think if you're trying to retain someone at a senior level within the business, drop feeding equity is a really, really good idea. Obviously, you don't want to give away so much that you then get really annoyed that you've given away the whole of your business. But, you know, have a figure in mind from the beginning as to how much you're willing to give away as an absolute max. Never start off at that figure, start off much lower and then feed equity as you go along. And in terms of like retention, I think it's very much dependent on how you manage them, how you lead them and what you're offering them and what value it's giving them. I think a lot of people now are massively bought into well-being and stuff like that. So, you know, having clear objectives for them to achieve, but then also allowing them to have some flexibility and freedom to do their own other things that they're interested in would really, really help. So, you know, for instance, if you know, you're after an electronics person, but you don't have enough to pay a salary, maybe see if they can do 2 days a week for you, and like give them some equity, or give them a little bit of an hourly rate or something like that, and then up it as you get more funding. And I think it's probably the fairest way to do it. I mean, a lot of our clients don't struggle with retention yet because they are startups, so they're still, you know, at the start of the journey. You typically don't find people leaving within the first year. And I think if people do leave, that should be a time for you to reflect on what went wrong. And I'd always have someone kind of not within the business. I'd have like, I don't know, someone that's affiliated to the organisation, call that person if you do have anyone leave and understand really the reasons why. So then you can learn from that. And I'd always look at, you know, finding ways for yourself to grow. And I think some businesses are just so straight cut sometimes, they really miss the bigger picture with some of their employees and they lose out on some really good talent because they've just not spent the time trying to understand who works for their business and what motivates them. So I'd say that for your retention. Does anyone else have any questions?
If I could go back a little bit to the selection process, you said 2 stages is like optimal, and 1 stage is like looking at their portfolio, looking at their resume. What are some common, again, like red flags you see in somebody's experience that shows maybe they might be embellishing, or some things that you might see in a CV that complement?
Right, so you always get people when you're interviewing who say, yes, I can do that. Yes, 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 yes. And I always say you have to ask and like really delve into the nitty gritty. So how did you do this? What was your involvement in this piece of work? Can you explain to me your process? You know, what were you thinking of and why did you think that? And then what led you to that decision, so you can really fully understand how someone's mind works. I think that's probably the most important thing when you're hiring someone into your business. You really want to understand someone's thought process and how they got to that point. And I think asking for as many examples as possible. You know, if it's a development type of thing, and if you have a development background, ask for examples of code or ask for the Git. You know, and the GitHub, and like actually like have a look at like what they've done and like decipher it yourself and ask them questions about it. And that's probably how I do it. I'd always delve deeper in. So if someone's very much like, yes, 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 I can do that. Okay, talk me through exactly what you did from start to finish. And, you know, you'll get so many people who will answer the question again, you know, after you've asked them to delve into it, and they'll kind of be like, yeah, well, I did this, and then I did this, and I did this, and delve further into it. So how did you do that? Like, and really, really like assess. Don't just skim past anything, because I think you can really understand if someone's chatting pure rubbish if they can't explain, you know, the real fundamentals of what they've done to get to X point. So yeah, I'd do that.
Quick follow-up. I think, of course, what you said before about drip feeding equity could be a solution, but if you're trying to hire somebody who complements your weaknesses and is in a field like I think in your situation where you don't you don't have that domain expertise to be able to delve deeper. What is there any way to kind of mitigate for that or have that into account?
What do you mean? Sorry, I don't understand the
we're
question.
not electrical engineers, but we'd be hiring ones. So
Yeah.
how do we test that they're actually good electrical engineers without being good electrical engineers ourselves?
So I think that's references. Like you're just going to have to get references on them. You know, there's no other way really to test other than if you know someone who is, you know, I wouldn't say, you know, a Ned. I know I keep saying the word, but it's going to be so important for you. You know, look for someone who is like really senior in the industry. I don't know what your product is, but look for someone that's done that elsewhere and tell them what you're doing. And chances are they'll be like, my God, that's really cool. Like, I'm really bought into it. I love it. Like, tell me more. And then tell them what your struggles are. You'd be surprised how many people would be like, actually, yeah, okay, I'm willing to help you out. I'll have a look and I'll let you know, if this person could be suitable. Get them on your interview panel, or even a lot of startups now are doing podcasts and stuff like that. So if there are people that you want to reach out to and you want to have in your close network, get them on a podcast. Get them close to you and then like use their knowledge and stuff. You'd be surprised, like there's a lot for them to gain from helping you out as well. So I think, you've got nothing to lose. I think I'd just go for someone who does have the expertise, who would be willing to help you out. And again, you'd find them on LinkedIn. So have a good search. You have to know your competitors anyway, because you want to stay ahead of them. So reach out to all of your competitors, reach out to the C-suite, reach out to the product, the product managers or the VPs of product, and speak to them and just be like, look, this is what we're doing. Just be completely honest. Yeah.
I think currently we're at the stage where our competition don't even know we exist. And we're like using the element of surprise, when we get like 6 figures in funding, that they'll be like,
I know. I'd just be honest, like just be like, I don't know, are you on the MBA course or?
No, we're
Yeah.
studying material science and engineering.
Yeah, so just be honest and just say, look, we're doing this. We've got this really great, product or this really great idea. We're looking to hire a such and such. Do you know anyone? They might know someone. You never know. Like they might have children at university who are following in their footsteps, and they might be able to recommend people to you. So I think
I got a recruitment reference from this woman who worked in a gift shop in the Cotswolds. I was there for the weekend. And I told her I studied material science, and then she was like, "Oh, my son does that. He's working for a sensors company." I was like, "What kind of sensors? We need a sensor company. What do you mean?" And she like gave me stuff for my LinkedIn, his LinkedIn and stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was like the most random conversation, but it worked out.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, I think have as many random conversations as possible because you just never know, like, what could come of it. So, really, the most important thing is getting your brand and your name out there. And the faster you do that, the more things will just start falling into place for you. I think the more you hold off doing that, you're stopping yourself from moving to the next stage. So just do it.
He'll be the funnest person in parties. Everyone having a nice time. Hey, have you heard of nanograph?
One thing with delving into conversation and then the testimonials to find out, whether they're chatting crap or not. But what about sales people? Because you've got sales in every area.
Yeah, so with salespeople, I know there's a really, really easy way to really understand if someone's like good at sales. And that's, if you are going to hire them, you have to get your references. And it's very, very common in sales to ask for pay slips so you can actually see how much commission they're earning. And then really if they are proper salespeople or not. And straight away that cancels out any kind of, maybe they're not right. Salespeople know how to talk, but then there are also loads of salespeople who really are really rubbish. So you can tell straight away from a conversation if someone's going to be good for your business. But I'd always ask for proof, like figures. How did they get to that? How much money did they make for the business? and ask them for the numbers, like the actual ratios, what do they work towards? If it's a call type of thing, how many calls do they make in a day? Write down what they tell you, and then literally physically figure out how many minutes there are in a day and how many calls they must be doing in those minutes, because you'll be able to decipher really fast if someone's, being a Billy bullshitter or if they are actually what they say they are. But I think pay slips are the best one.
That's gold.
Because then if they say, I don't want to show you my pay slips, then you're like, well, well then.
You'll not be getting one from me.
Yeah.
Good comment.
Would that apply, I guess, the same principle to social media people you onboard to do all of that for you?
I wouldn't say it would, not the pay slips type
No,
of.
not the pay slips, but
What would
seeing
be
the
the
point
The
of
followers,
what
yeah, of course, yeah, followers. You look at the followers, you look at the content that they put out. I mean, we have loads of people contacting us, to do our social media and stuff like that. And we always ask them to produce what they would post for us. Like, give me a few examples, based on the conversation that we've just had and what you know about my business. Give me a few examples of what you'd post for us. And then see if it's something that you like. And if it is, go ahead with them. If not, then just don't do it. Yeah.
How much do you think the startup should give in equity in the first 2, 3, or 4 years to hire someone?
I mean, that really depends on the startup and the situation and what it is that you're looking for. So it really, really depends. Can you give me a bit more of information?
In development team, for example, a 5-person development team,
Yeah.
how much should give in equity for each person?
I'd probably,
If
it's
all
really
they
depending
are
on,
students.
yeah, if they're all students, me personally, I'd be really, really fair about it, because if you want them to be bought into the business and bought into the growth, you really want your team, your founding team, to be really happy. And I think split it equally. If you're the one that's leading it, maybe give a bit more to yourself, so you're like the main, shareholder of the business. But other than that, I'd split everything else equally.
But a maximum percentage of, like, I have the 50%, my co-founder the 50%, and of all that, how much do you think is the maximum percentage that should we give to them?
It's very much dependent on what you want to give and what value you think that all of these developers can bring. So if you're not from a development background and you're purely relying on these developers, I would really give them as much equity as possible, especially if you're not paying them a salary. I'd give them 10% each as a minimum. But again, it's really dependent on what you're happy to give away, and then also what the developers would be happy to work for. I think the best way that I would do it is I'd just get them all into a room and I'd be like, look, we love you all. Like, we want you to be part of our founding team and we want to give you some equity. How can we motivate you? And find out from them what they expect first. I'd always say that before you just randomly give out equity. Like, find out, what they require to be motivated enough to be part of the business and part of the, the founding team. It's a big thing and it's an exciting thing to offer, but then, you always want to make sure that you've got enough for you to make sure that you've got, overall, what's the word that they use? I'm it for my company. It's like the main shareholder. You want to be like the main shareholder of the business, but you want to give away enough to really make sure that they're all motivated. I think it's on a case-by-case basis. So my co-founders, I've got the most, but I do the most in terms for our business, but then they bring a lot of value in terms of the marketing and then the financial experience that they've got. So we're split like, 3 by 3. But that works for me and I'm happy to do that because, I see the value and the benefit. Anything else?
Maybe just a very last question. So, what should the startups look out for when writing a job description and
what the job entails, so it attracts the right sort of people?
Yeah, so I think the best job specs that I've seen start off with the mission and the organisation and what it is that, you know, the journey that you want your startup to be on. And then it goes into what you will offer them. Like, so as an employee of the business, this is what we've got to offer, this is the environment, this is the type of team, these are the type of people that you'd be working with, these are our attributes, and, you know, we're looking for XYZ type of skills to come and join us and be part of our journey. And then I'd go into the skills. So, you know, whatever it is that you're looking for, have like 5 or 6 main skills that you definitely cannot like differ from or move away from, and then have the extra bonus skills that if you found someone like that, oh my God, amazing. And then at the very end, we always have like the employer piece. So, you know, what you can offer them as part of the benefits package. And then that's when you would list, you know, if you're with us and you get us through to X, you know, another funding round, that we're happy to give away share options. I'd never ever put in a job description how much of the equity you're willing to give away. Usually those conversations happen, you know, after interview stage and at the offer stage, and it's always been on a case-by-case basis with all of our clients. Like the equity piece, which is why it's so difficult to answer your question, is genuinely on a case-by-case basis, and it's based on the individuals and what they're looking for as well. So yeah, I'd just put in the job description, equity is also on offer, or, you know, equity is available in the business, or share options, and then wait until you've found the right person that you want to hire, and then at the very last stage, when it's an offer stage, then talk about the equity.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, thanks.
I really appreciate it.
I hope it was helpful.
It was. And as soon as we